The Pantheon of Hallownest is already a long and difficult challenge for most. But what if you capped your health at 4? What if you reduced your nail damage to almost half? What if you could only have a 1/6 of your normal soul? And to top it all off, what if you couldn't wear any charms at all? Welcome to Pantheon 5 All Bindings, one of the most brutal challenges I have ever faced in a video game. This is something I told myself I would never do. I truly never thought I would ever even attempt it. This is just too hard, I would say, or that's just too masochistic, I would assure myself. Well, it turns out I am, in fact, a masochist. Welcome to my journey in beating Pantheon 5 All Bindings.
But first, did you know only 0.1% of you are subscribed?
My journey truly begins not with Pantheon 5, but with Pantheon 4. I thought to myself, hey, I'll never do P5, but maybe P4 is possible. And so, on September 11th, 2024, after only 13 attempts, I managed to actually do it.
Oh my god, I did it. I freaking did it. Let's go. Oh my god. Yo. Oh. Yo, let's go, dude. That was the most stressful thing I've ever done.
And so after P4, I went back and did Pantheons 1 through 3 as well, and I only died once in P3 throughout all of them. And it was here I realized that Pantheon 5 All Bindings might actually be possible for me, but I still decided that it was way too much at the end of the day. So fast forward just over a year from September 11th, 2024 to September 13th, 2025. I had just beaten SILKSONG's true ending a couple days prior, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. In fact, I was probably feeling a little bit too good about myself. So much so, I decided, hey, why don't I attempt the impossible? Why don't I actually try to beat Pantheon 5 All Bindings? To practice, I went back and beat Pantheons 1 through 4 with All Bindings again, and I actually got through them fairly easily. Furthermore, I used the toggleable bindings mod to allow me to fight bosses in the Hall of Gods with bindings on, and to be certain I wouldn't make it all the way to Absolute Radiance just to die, I beat her with all bindings on Radiant. And yes, it was as miserable as it sounds. At this point, I was confident. I was ready. I might actually be able to beat Pantheon 5 All Bindings. And so, thus begins my first attempts. I didn't record every single one from the beginning, but I think I only missed a run or two, which as anyone who has tried this before could guess, they died at the collector. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's get on with the first attempt. I plow through the first 5 bosses with ease, only taking a couple damage through all of them. And then I get to Gorb, who begins promptly handing my ass to me. And to make matters worse, I completely choke the heal. But after some careful maneuvering, I barely escape death and beat him. And after that, I would be plain sailing for a good bit, beating 16 bosses without ever having another close call. But ultimately, it came to the fated boss, the Collector. To explain why this boss in particular is so difficult on Pantheon 5 All Bindings, usually you can one-shot the adds with your nail. But with the nail binding and the charm binding, your damage is reduced to the point of being unable to do that anymore. And not being able to instantly kill things when 2 or 3 of them start dropping down at once becomes really difficult. You have the primal aspid spitting at you, you have armored balders rolling around, and you have the collector himself just jumping around and clapping your cheeks. Usually you want to save your soul to fireball the adds immediately, but in order to get more soul to keep doing that, you need to get up close and personal with the adds. And getting up close and personal with primal aspids is not a fun time. And furthermore, if you end up taking damage, not only is it really hard to even find the time to heal, but even if you do pull off a heal, you just used up all the soul that you need to fireball the adds. There is some very important silver lining though, which is that nail arts will one-shot all of the adds, so those are a necessity in this fight. If you charge up a Great Slash when he jumps up, it charges in just enough time to instantly kill 1 or 2 things. Of course, this means you still have to deal with whatever's left over, but you can just charge up another nail art and hit them with it too. But unfortunately for me, I should have practiced this boss more, because ultimately I would succumb to the onslaught of adds. And this is by far the worst part of doing Pantheon 5 All Bindings, or honestly just Pantheons in general, which is having to start from the beginning again and work your way all the way back up to where you were before. except you are just so weak in Pantheon 5 all bindings that it just takes eons to get back there. So in we go again. This time I would have a near-death experience with Vengeful Viking casually, and then not have another close call all the way up to Sisters of Battle. Thank God I did not land in those spikes, man. And just like the attempt before, I work my way up to the collector and have a very similar experience.
Oh, fuck.
So, yep, another death to the collector. And just keep in mind, those 2 attempts alone were already over an hour. So this definitely takes a while. But at this point, I'm pissed off. I need my revenge. So I immediately head right back in. And died of Vengeful Viking. So head back in again. And almost died of Vengeful Viking. But instead, I died to... So after dying twice in a row to the early game, I start locking in just a little more. Except for the part where I almost died of Vengeful Viking again. And I also have a really intense fight with Aura Mato. Thankfully I clutch up though, and man, I was probably only a frame or 2 from getting hit there. So I keep working my way through the area bosses, yada yada, until I get to Sisters of Battle, where after some crazy blunders, I end up at 1 HP and have to lock the fuck in for a really intense fight. And just to give you a taste of how long these boss fights can be, here's the entire rest of the fight. Yeah, so imagine the tragedy of fighting for over 20 minutes, getting to 1 HP in this fight, and just as I started to get hope that I'd be able to clutch it up, I just get absolutely pranked by this bitch here. Like, damn. Admittedly, I had plenty of opportunities to heal, but in the heat of the moment, I just didn't really think about it. But a loss is a loss, and now I have to go back in again. So after an hour and a half, the furthest I had ever made it was the Collector, and he had killed me every single time I had reached him, and I even died multiple times prior to him too. And so it was at this point that I truly locked in. I would not stand for this anymore, so I embarked on another faithful attempt. And boy howdy, did I do great this time. So finally, I beat the Collector for the very first time. And I didn't even get to 1 HP either. A huge improvement I made in the fight was using Cyclone Slash instead of Great Slash. This is actually a strategy I saw on 211A's Pantheon 5 All Binding speedrun. You should definitely check it out if you want to see how a real pro does this. And so from here, I thought to myself, surely I win now, right? Surely the Collector was the great bottleneck, and I'd be able to get through the rest of this with ease, right? Well, yes. I blazed through boss after boss after boss, never encountering a single close call. Because here's the thing, despite these bosses being much harder and far later in the Pantheon, I was far more confident in these than in the rest prior, since paradoxically, them being more difficult has actually made them easier for me, since I have practiced them more than the earlier bosses and developed really good strategies and muscle memory against them. So now, there are only 6 bosses left in the entire Pantheon, and these are the bosses that I honestly expect I might die on. We have Markoth, Grey Prince Zote, Fel Champion, Nightmare King Grim, Pure Vessel, and Absolute Radiance. This is gonna be an uphill battle. On my first Pantheon 5 attempt ever, Markoth was actually my first death. Markoth is tricky for a few reasons. First, there is no floor, and so misstepping leads to guaranteed damage. Second, the spinning shield makes it hard to hit him sometimes, especially in the second phase where he has 2 of them. Third, the random spears he throws at you can sometimes be off screen or just cut you off perfectly. And the most annoying part is when his random movement just happens to fly towards you nonstop and constantly collide with you. With all that said, let's just all agree with ourselves that Markoth is definitely an annoying boss. Like, who actually likes him? But no matter, as I would be able to kill him without reaching 1 HP, although I did get kinda close. Next is Grey Prince Zote. I definitely don't need to explain why this boss is difficult. Not only does he have really weird attacks, but he also has the Collector problem, which is that he spawns ads that I cannot one-shot. For the record though, these ads are much less annoying and don't usually spawn as much, so it's significantly easier than the Collector's ads. And sure enough, he does give me some challenge. But I do manage to defeat him. Next is Fel Champion. This is a boss that I'm definitely not as confident in, as at this point, all it takes is 2 simple mistakes and I'm cooked. Usually you can just skip all of his phases by shriek spamming, but with no soul reserves and no shaman stone, that is not going to work here. This is going to be a battle of attrition. So there we go. I only actually got hit once in this entire fight, and it was by a barrel, not by him. But alas, now we come to the final 3. Nightmare King Grim, Pure Vessel, and Absolute Radiance. At this point, my biggest concern is NKG for sure. Once I beat him, I go into Pure Vessel with 5 lifeblood, and that's a fight I'm very comfortable with. And then I get to go into Radiance with whatever lifeblood I have left over, if any. And again, having beaten Radiance on Radiant with all bindings, I'm pretty confident against her. So in my mind, it's all up to this. NKG with no lifeblood. So if I get hit twice at all, the whole run is immediately over. And NKG can really easily catch you off guard with some of his attacks. And it's also very easy to get hit by a pufferfish ball. So let's lock the fuck in. And there we go. Nightmare King Grim, all bindings, no hit. Safe to say, my heart rate is in the thousands at this point. I collect my juicy lifeblood and head on to Pure Vessel. And boom, baby! Pure Vessel, also no hit. That means I get to go in Absolute Radiance, the very last boss, with 9 health total. And that's pretty good. I'm feeling very confident with myself at this point. I know we can win this. So with some deep breaths, we go in. So after a very grindy phase 1, we go into phase 2, having taken 0 damage so far. Things are starting to look pretty good, but if you know anything about Radiance, it ain't over till it's over. Absolute fucking tragedy. I came all this way. I beat the Collector. I did in KG in PV, no hit. I did every single boss without reaching 1 HP once, just to choke really, really hard against Absolute Radius. At this point, I become utterly depressed and I immediately log off. I was beyond defeated. Or was I? Because right after I clicked stop recording, I felt the urge. I felt the call pulling me right back in again. And so just as quickly as I stopped recording, I started recording again. And went back in for another attempt. And despite a random close call with the shipman himself, I would blast my way right up to the Collector again. And at this point, I was beyond pissed. I refused to die to him anymore. So I went in to destroy the Collector once and for all. Or so I thought, because it turns out I just suck at this game lol. And after that salt in the wound, I stopped recording again. And then I started recording again, because at this point I was just addicted more than anything, and I would stop at nothing to beat this challenge. But at this point I was just too frustrated and flustered and started playing very sloppily against some of the earlier bosses, dying to Gruzmother, and then Vengefly King, and then Vengefly King again, and then Vengefly King again, and then Vengefly King again, and then Gorb! And then finally, massive fucking Moss Charger. And after that utter humiliation, I decided I was truly done for the day this time. I've been playing for several hours straight at this point, and I just needed a break. And like the amazing procrastinator that I am, I just put it off till the next day. But if Expedition 33 taught me anything, it's that tomorrow comes. And so, almost exactly 24 hours later, I was back, and I was ready. I had come so far, I learned so much. I made it past the Collector, I made it all the way to Absolute Radiance, just to suffer from such a tragic case of skill issue. At this point, I would not take it anymore. I would not let anything stop me. And so, I embarked on my first run of the day, which would turn out to be a truly fateful run.
Just like my first P-Fuck mission ever, I died to Absolute Radiance. On the first try, for the second try again, Absolute Radiance, you can't do it! Bobby wants him on you, Bobby tries! Fuck you!
Yeah, I have no words. This was genuinely one of the hardest but most rewarding challenges I have ever done in a game. And dare I say, it wasn't actually all that bad. It only took a few hours and just over a dozen attempts. So, would I recommend this challenge to anybody? Probably not. I mean, if you love the game as much as I do, and you really enjoy the boss fights, then sure, give it a shot. Like, there's no harm in trying it at least. But very few people will ever actually do this, because there's no achievement for it, there's nothing for it other than bragging rights and pain. Which again, if you're a masochist like me, then you like the pain. At the end of the day, Hollow Knight is my favorite game of all time, by far, and it has been such a pleasure to play it and have an amazing time with it. And all I can say is, when can I do this in Silksong too?